Pitzer disappeared on Monday, June 28, 2004. When a person disappears without a trace, often the most critical information is hidden in their actions and words from the days before they vanished. April Pitzer's last known whereabouts may hold the clues to what happened to her. A former model and mother of two plans a homecoming after 6 months in the Mojave Desert.
She had real high hopes and she was so excited.
She wanted to go see her kids. It was time for her to leave.
But she never makes it home.
I said, something has happened to April. April's gone. They've done something with her.
A harrowing tale begins to unfold.
A person made the comment that I know where she's at. She's in a hole.
If somebody gets rid of somebody out here in the desert, it's rare they're ever found.
It's a windy, unforgiving evening in the Mojave Desert in May 2004. 30-year-old April Beth Pitzer aimlessly wanders along Old Route 66 in Newberry Springs, California. The young mother of two from Texas, who once aspired to be a model, is now homeless, hungry, and defeated. She wonders how life has come to this. Just 4 years earlier in Fort Worth, Texas, April Pitzer was living the life that dreams are made of.
Chase loved April. He loved her very much. And she loved him. April's father-in-law bought him a beautiful new home, and they had it all.
Married to Chase Pitzer and about to give birth to their first little girl, April's life is heading in the right direction. Then comes a knock on her door that changes everything.
The DEA showed up at her residence in Fort Worth and told her she was coming back to Arkansas to be a federal witness.
When April was 22 and living in Arkansas, she was arrested for driving while intoxicated. She agreed to become a drug informant rather than face DWI charges. Now, 6 years later, she is called upon to testify. With the help of April's testimony, dozens of convictions are made against major players in a methamphetamine drug ring.
And she was never the same. She looked over her shoulder everywhere she went. Then she had Bradley.
The birth of her second daughter brings April renewed happiness. But before long, the paranoia begins again.
She wouldn't even let her girls sleep in their rooms because she was scared somebody was going to come through the windows and kill them. And all of this paranoia started really taking its toll on her marriage itself.
To subdue her fears, April starts drinking and doing drugs.
Her and Chase had grown very distant. It's hard on me to understand all this fear, this paranoia, people going to kill her. But I was her mom, and I couldn't give up on her.
April has a breakdown and is diagnosed as being bipolar.
April just crumbled, you know? They'd put her on this medication, that medication. She was so beautiful, and then she just started getting thin, and it was just so sad.
With her marriage all but over, April takes her two girls and moves into an apartment.
She took a job at this little shamrock up the road from where she and Chase lived. The girls had never been away from her. She was a hands-on mom all the time.
Just when she thinks life can't get any worse, April's in-laws gain custody of her children.
She went home one day to get some more stuff, and the children were taken from her because she was bipolar. They thought she needed a break.
Separated from her children, April starts socializing with a different crowd.
I
met April back sometime in Texas. I was at a friend's house and we were having a little social gathering.
John Lopez is a truck driver from California who has been staying in Texas with relatives. When John and April meet, the two seem to hit it off.
They decided to go out just to, mingle and have a few drinks and have a good time.
He paid April the attention that she felt she wasn't getting. John came into her life at a time when she needed to feel loved.
Just a few months later, John starts making plans to leave Texas and go back west.
I asked her if she wanted to come out to California and have a different view of the world, And she decided to come out with me.
April's thinking was, well, distance makes the heart grow fonder. And if I put distance between me and Chase and my mother-in-law and father-in-law, they'll realize that they need me to take care of these babies.
It's December 2003, and April Pitzer leaves Texas temporarily to clear her head.
And everything was going to be fine, and she's going to have her little girls back and her husband, her beautiful home, and her beautiful life. But it didn't end up like that at all.
The Mojave Desert is at once enticing and dangerous. Home to the mines of the California Gold Rush, explorers and travelers alike have gravitated to the desert for decades in the hopes of realizing dreams at any cost. But once there, April realizes opportunities for an outsider are scarce.
There's a lot of really good people lived out here their entire lives, but for those people who are moving out here trying to get away from the city, there's not a whole lot of work out here.
With so much space and little opportunity for legitimate employment, the desert can be a playground for criminal activity.
Barstow, California is known for methamphetamine capital of the world, so they say. I would say yes, there's some drugs that are floating around in the area. I try to warn her that there's certain places that you can go to that are okay, and then there's other places that you have to watch what you're doing out there.
As it turns out, April is drawn to the very crowd John warns her about. One night, at a party in the desert outside of Barstow, April meets a man who will change the course of her life. There's an instant and intense attraction.
This person on the dirt bike said, I've got 20 acres, we've got some trailer homes, and you can come home with me, and you'll have a place to live.
With a new man on the scene, April and John's relationship goes sour. Despite his warnings, April moves to a desert community about 20 miles east of Barstow. The world April is about to enter is a far cry from the life she's left behind.
They didn't even have electricity in that house where she was at. I didn't know.
Coming up, when April Pitzer hits rock bottom, she reaches out for help. But is it too late? When April Pitzer's marriage fails and she loses custody of her children, she leaves Texas and takes a trip out to the California desert to regroup. But a few months after her arrival, April is introduced to an underworld of drug dealers and addicts. Steve Wilkinson remembers when April arrived outside of Barstow in late January 2004.
The house I lived up in was right up on the road, and she was staying back there with her boyfriend.
A lot of people with criminal records living out there.
Her boyfriend and his brother had been arrested quite a bit. I've been arrested a few times for drug cases, so there was a lot of activity.
As a loving mother of two from out of town, April stands out among her new group of friends.
She had that southern accent, a little different, not the normal for out here.
months go by, and April's situation is getting increasingly precarious. When she and her new boyfriend break up, April has nowhere to go. With no job and no money, April lives day to day, never knowing where she will eat or who will offer her a bed for the night. She has been lying to her mother, Gloria Denton, about her life out in California.
I didn't know April was homeless and living from place to place. I thought that she had a job and everything was okay.
But life is far from okay for April Pitzer. The desert is an ocean separating her from her children. She is depressed and doesn't know where to turn.
She started walking down National Trails Highway.
A man in a truck passes by and sees April in distress. He pulls over and asks if she needs help.
And she just lost it, started crying, and told him her troubles, and he said, "I'm taking you home to my mama."
April accepts the kind gesture and goes with the man to meet his sick, elderly mother, Barbara Killebrew. They become friends instantly. Both are lonely and seeking companionship.
April was a caregiver. That's all she ever did, you know? I mean, she took care of people.
Taking care of Barbara reminds April of the life she left behind, one she desperately wants to get back to.
Barbara told her, "Your mama needs to know the truth." And April called me, and it was the hardest phone call I ever took.
April tells her mother about the dark road she has traveled.
I was shocked. And she said, "Mama, I just didn't want you to worry." She said, "I was just so ashamed, you know."
April also says she wants to come home. It's early June 2004, and Gloria Denton immediately starts making plans for her daughter April's return to her hometown in the hills of Clarksville, Arkansas. But April isn't quite ready.
Her mom seemed to think that she wanted to come home. She was ready to. She just hadn't made that commitment that she was going to do it.
While days are spent with Barbara, April still needs a place to stay at night. Unfortunately, Barbara doesn't have an extra bedroom for her at the house. For shelter, she must rely on the kindness of other friends in Newberry Springs.
She'd been staying at my house maybe a couple of weeks or something like that. But she wanted to go see her kids, and that was a good thing for her to go do. You know, it was time for her to leave.
But according to Gloria Denton, her daughter stopped staying at Steve's house not because the timing is right, but because she is scared.
She called me and told me that she ran into this person out there.
In a strange twist of fate, the past has finally caught up with April Pitzer.
She met a girl out here and found out that she knew who she was from back east because I guess April was a federal informant back there. And it was on that case that this girl's husband went to prison.
There was the girl and her husband that she testified against in the state of Arkansas 7 years later. How's that happen?
According to Steve, when April realizes who this woman is, she overreacts, calling too much attention to her past as a drug informant. After all, many of her new friends have made their careers off the drug trade.
She kept wanting to apologize and say how sorry she was, but the girl didn't want nothing to do with her. Just leave me alone, go away, it's over.
All the years of fear and paranoia are finally substantiated.
I said, "Oh my God, April, you gotta get out of there." I said, "You're gonna die."
Steve Wilkinson was in federal prison on drug charges at the time of those convictions. He remembers the case that April testified in that broke up a major drug ring.
32 people went to federal prison over it. There was chemicals being bought back east, brought out to California for the manufacture of methamphetamine. There were a lot of drugs being sold back there from out here. A lot of people got caught up in it.
Steve is baffled that the woman whose testimony helped make the convictions ends up in his home in California.
That's just like the needle in the haystack, how she could ever land in a place like this and end up in a circle of the people that were involved in that case. There's strange.
Gloria wants to wire April money for a bus ticket immediately, but April tells her to wait.
I was moving from Texas to Clarksville during that time. She said, Mama, when you bring all your stuff back from Texas, I'll come to Arkansas, and that way I can help you unpack. I said, okay.
In the meantime, she persuades April to go somewhere safe.
I said, April, is there somebody that you trust where you can stay? And she said, Uncle Chuck.
Chuck Hollister is a quiet, middle-aged man, well known for taking in people who are down on their luck. Over the last few months, April had occasionally stayed at his house, off Old Route 66, in Newberry Springs.
She said he's got a nice house and everything, and he's got reliable transportation, and I can go there. I said, okay.
I took her out on Wednesday and dropped her off in Newberry Springs at Chuck's house.
April is just days away from returning to her mother and a place where she will finally feel safe.
She had real high hopes, and she was so excited, oh, Mom, I'm coming home, I'm coming home.
But 1 week later, when Gloria tries to reach her daughter in Newberry Springs, April is nowhere to be found.
I started calling Chuck, because that was the only number I had. When it rang. Never could get him.
Coming up, police track down a witness who thinks she knows what happened to April. What they learn is chilling. Just when April Pitzer comes clean and asks her mother for help to get back home, a chance encounter from the past causes her to fear for her life. Now, instead of planning a homecoming celebration, April's mother, Gloria, is desperately trying to locate her daughter's whereabouts. And the man April has been staying with, Chuck Hollister, has not been answering his phone.
Tried to call her. Couldn't get her. And on July the 4th, I finally got a call.
April's friend, Barbara Killebrew, had been in the hospital. One of the first things she does when she gets home is phone Gloria to check on April.
Barbara called me and she's like, how's it feel to have your baby back? I said, Barbara, April's not home.
As she hears those words, Gloria begins to fear the worst.
I said, Barbara, something's happened to April. Who was the last person with her? And she said, Chuck Hollister. He brought her out here to get her stuff.
He had taken her to several friends' house. He took her to Barbara's house. She was telling everybody goodbye. She had packed her stuff, and her stuff was ready to go.
It's been 8 days since April was last seen. Gloria is frantic and tries to file a missing persons report.
I called San Bernardino County. They wouldn't let me report her missing. They said she just had a bad marriage, lost her kids. April's not missing. She just don't want to be found. And I'm like, you don't know my daughter.
Gloria and April have a special bond as mother and daughter.
Everybody thought we were sisters, She was my friend. She was my daughter. She was my everything.
When April was just 3, Gloria Denton lost custody of her 2 children to relatives.
I was 19 years old, and they thought I was too young to be a mother.
For the next 15 years, Gloria fought relentlessly to get her children back. Refusing to lose touch, Gloria and April maintained a close relationship over the years.
Her cards, they tell the story. She loved me very much, and I loved her.
When April is 17, she finally moves home to be with her mother.
We were inseparable, absolutely inseparable, and April said it so well. She's like, Mama, now we have forever, and nobody can ever separate us again.
Now, in June 2004, Gloria fears she's losing April once again. Days pass, and still no sign of her daughter, and no word from Chuck Hollister.
On July the 16th, I said, Barbara, you've got to make a report. Something has happened to April. April's gone. I said, they've done something with her.
This time, police take the report. Then, just 3 days later, Gloria finally gets the call she has been anxiously awaiting. It's from Chuck Hollister.
And finally, he called me back. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry that I've not been in touch with you. He goes, I've been moving a friend to Oregon. And I said, Chuck, where's April?
Monday morning, he got up to go to work. April was still there. He came home, and April was gone, and he hadn't seen her since. He thought somebody gave her a ride to a bus stop, and she had gone home.
Chuck tells Gloria about April's state of mind the Sunday night before she goes missing.
She had the pictures of her girls out on the counter, and she was crying. She held their pictures up to her heart and said, I'm going home, I'm going home.
But what Chuck tells Gloria next is very disturbing.
Chuck said that a couple of her bags were still there on the property.
Oh, it's all here. He said, there's her little white suitcase, there's her backpack.
Why would April have left all her belongings behind if she was en route to Arkansas? When a month passes and there's still no word from April, investigators begin to search the area.
Missing person flyers were made up and posted throughout Barstow, Daggett, Yermo, Newberry Springs.
The strategy works. On September 9th, 2004, a Barstow City transportation employee alerts police to a comment from a bus rider.
A person getting on the local transit bus, seen a flyer at the bus station, made mention that she knew that person, knew April, and made the comment that, I know where she's at, she's in a hole.
It's an ominous, disturbing clue. Police track down the witness for further questioning.
She denied saying that she was in a hole, but she did tell me that she was at a party, and somebody at the party, she couldn't remember who, said that April was dead and in a mine shaft.
Detectives have a lead at last. But the fact that there are over 20,000 mines in San Bernardino County alone is daunting. Deputy Coroner and Missing Persons Coordinator David Van Norman is all too familiar with the area in question.
The desert is vast, and it really doesn't help to say that somebody might have been placed into a mine in light of the fact that there are literally thousands and thousands of mines.
We're between Nevada State Line, the major freeway into Vegas off the 15 freeway. We're not that far from LA.
If somebody gets rid of somebody out here in the desert, it's rare they're ever found.
We seem to be a dumping ground sometimes.
But it's not just the witness's testimony that leads investigators to believe April has been killed and buried in the desert. That same week, in early September, another piece of evidence comes to light, this time from a truck stop 800 miles away in a neighboring state.
A note was written up in Oregon at a truck stop, men's bathroom wall, that said, looking for missing girl from Arkansas, 3 miles east of Barstow, I-15 freeway. From Barstow to the Calico exit, the ground search was conducted. And again, that's an area where there's hundreds of mine shafts. We had nothing more to go on than that.
Meanwhile, the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department obtains surveillance video at the truck stop that captures everyone going into and coming out of the men's bathroom.
It's 24-hour live video, and we have it from June all the way through to the day it was found in September.
In the end, neither the ground searches nor the surveillance video provides any further insight into April's case.
No evidence was found. That doesn't mean that the rumor isn't true.
Coming up, could cryptic notes etched in an old miner's shack hold the answers to April's disappearance? Get more Disappeared online at investigation.discovery.com. It's mid-September, and the search for April Beth Pitzer is heating up. But everyone fears the worst. First, a witness overhears that April's body is in a desert mine, and then a message found in a truck stop bathroom reveals the missing woman from Arkansas is close to Barstow, California, off the I-15. Police and April's mother in Arkansas have begun tracking people down who knew April, desperate for any clues that can explain her disappearance on June 28th.
April didn't have a phone of her own. Wherever she went, she'd call me collect. I started calling all the phone numbers back, and one person would tell me a little more and a little more and a little more.
Gloria wanted to believe her daughter is still alive, but that hope is fading. She hears many theories about where her daughter's body is, but there is one location that keeps coming up: the mines of Ludlow. It turns out that Chuck Hollister, the last person known to have seen April alive, has a close friend named Dan, who claims to own a mine out in Ludlow called the Red Dog Mine.
Chuck and him, mine, they made jewelry and stuff.
Dan and Chuck are known rockhounds. They spend a lot of their time together working the Red Dog Mine, about 30 miles east of Barstow.
Dan thought he was going to get rich. The town of Ludlow was part of the Mother Lode during the California Gold Rush.
This was an old mining area back in the late 1800s. And there were some old shacks out there that he'd write his name on, claimed that the shacks were his.
Dan often stays out at the Red Dog Mine for days on end. He's a hermit who likes to keep to himself.
He's got a sign on the front, well, handwritten. It says, "If you can read this, then you need to go have a nice day someplace else. Dan."
Dan had started working in this mine back in the 70s. At the very bottom of it, which is about 200 feet deep, he had wrote Dan 1979.
Dan had been around a long time. When he was younger, he was one of the guys that, you wouldn't want to cross.
The connection between the rumor that April's body might be found deep in a Ludlow mine and the fact that Dan worked the Red Dog Mine in Ludlow is enough for police to investigate further. First, they try to question Dan.
I went by his house numerous occasions. His vehicle would be there. I knocked on the door, he wouldn't answer. I would leave my business card. I left missing person flyers asking him to contact me.
Eventually, Dan does talk to the police, but says he knows nothing about April Pitzer's whereabouts. Without gaining any valuable information from Dan, investigators decide to go out to Ludlow and search the area. They begin at the dilapidated mining shacks Dan is rumored to have occupied, and are shocked at what they find.
There was some writing, strange writing on the walls inside. Things about him being a sniper in Vietnam, things about trespassing on his property.
What investigators tell Gloria is bone-chilling.
One of the sayings were, 3 people can keep a secret if 2 are dead. Another one was, if you want to disappear, I can help you. It'll bug me forever because I might have seen her tear down.
If Dan did actually write these things, was he referring to April's disappearance? Perhaps the Red Dog Mine itself will hold the answers.
Barstow Search and Rescue Team went out there. They also eventually took cadaver dogs out there, and they searched the mine from top to bottom.
But after 2 days with the cadaver dogs, police are confident April's body is not hidden there. there are no clues to indicate April had ever been to the mines. Could all this talk about Dan and the Red Dog Mine be just desert folklore?
Dan continued denying any knowledge of anything about April. He knew her. He didn't know what happened to her. He claimed he didn't do any harm to her.
The search for April is at a standstill. Then, a new and disturbing clue surfaces. In January of 2005, a woman recognizes April from a missing persons poster and realizes this was the same woman who worked for her in June of 2004, likely the same time she was staying with Chuck Hollister. Andre Pruitt, owner of the famous Baghdad Cafe in Newberry Springs, remembers well the day April came into the restaurant.
April came in and asked me for a job, said she needed to have something to do. She said she lived over on one of those dirt roads back there.
Chuck Hollister's house on Caspian Road is just a few blocks from the restaurant.
And I said, we're really not very busy, but I can let you work a few days a week. And she came back the next day.
On the first day of her job as a waitress, April's appearance makes a lasting impression on Andre.
She looked very nice. She had her hair up. She had on a white blouse and a black skirt, like she was really going to work somewhere nice.
At first, April seemed like a good fit at the Baghdad Cafe.
She was very sweet and nice to the customers. I said, well, she'll work out.
Then, on the second day of her new job, what Andre believes to be the days leading up to April's disappearance, she could tell things were not right. April looked like she had been beaten.
She looked like somebody had hit her in her eye because it was blue. I don't know who she was really involved with, but I knew that she was upset the day that I talked to her. I knew she needed to get out of here for whatever the reason. She looked really confused and maybe a little scared.
The mystery remains. Who was April scared of, and why? This was the same time period when April planned on returning home. Could this be the day she went missing?
And then that was the last day that I saw her. She didn't come back.
Coming up, on his deathbed, Dan leaves one last cryptic message in the search for April. Will it lead investigators to her remains? 6 months after April Pitzer is last seen in Newberry Springs, California, her mother and police have tried to piece together what might have happened to her. Following 2 disturbing leads, investigators search the Red Dog Mine for her body. When the deputy coroner learns of April's case and hears the rumor that she could be hidden in a mine, he calls a friend for help.
I assisted by making contact with the local desert lore historian.
He knows that desert like the palm of his hand, and he had been called to keep his eyes out for April.
Finally, a year and a half after April went missing, there's a break in the case. In late December of 2005, while leading a tour group through the old mines of Ludlow, the historian stumbles upon what will prove to be vital evidence.
He went in one of the old abandoned shacks and he seen women's clothing and he said, "Stop." He said, "We gotta leave here."
Hoping to be able to identify the clothes as April's, Gloria is on the first plane out to San Bernardino County in California. This is the first time Gloria Denton will confront the people and places associated with her missing daughter.
I just dropped to my knees when I got out there and I seen it. Just vast sand, hills, desert, shacks.
Gloria remembers how April described the desert and in one of their last conversations.
She said, Mom, it's a dog-eat-dog world out here. You do what you can to survive. And when I got out there, I knew what she meant.
The next morning, Gloria accompanies the search team to the area where the clothes were found. They head out to a mine called the Indian Queen, several miles beyond the Red Dog mine, which police searched 1 year ago. When they arrive, April's mother ventures out to scan the premises for any signs of her daughter. It doesn't take her long.
The first thing I seen was a red and black flannel shirt that I sent her.
Gloria sadly remembers the night April called her, asking for help.
She didn't have any clothes, she didn't have anything. She said, Mom, it's cold out here. You know, can you send me a coat? Something, flannel. So I fixed her up a couple boxes of clothes.
April told her mother how touched she had been to receive the care package.
She held them up to her and smelled them, and then she went in the bedroom and closed the door and just cried and cried because she could smell me and she knew where they came from.
After a thorough search, investigators feel confident April is not at the Indian Queen. But April's mother does not want to give up. Although the Red Dog mine was searched by police 1 year ago, Gloria wants to see it for herself. She asks the coroner, David Van Norman, to take her there. She shudders at what she finds.
When I pulled up, the first thing that I seen was the white suitcase that Barbara Killebrew gave April. It was just a flapping in the wind.
This is the same suitcase Chuck claimed April left behind at his house. It was not here when police searched the Red Dog mine in December of 2005. Now, 1 year later, April's clothes are scattered between the Indian Queen and Red Dog mines. The question persists. How and why did these items get from Chuck's house in Newberry Springs to the mines of Ludlow, 30 miles away?
I don't know how the clothing that Gloria says was her daughter's ended up in the desert, if it was the same clothes that was at Chuck's house.
Police and Gloria may never know the truth. Chuck Hollister is very sick with cancer. Detective Steve Pennington interrogates him one last time.
I asked him, if he had done this, if it was something that he wanted to clear his conscience, and he flat out denied any involvement in her disappearance.
As for the clothes that were found in the desert, they failed to provide any forensic value.
The hot of the desert sun and sometimes the cold of a desert winter will destroy any evidence that could be analyzed from that.
Soon after, Chuck Hollister passes away. As time progresses, the case of April Pitzer gets increasingly complicated and enigmatic.
There's been so many rumors that have floated around out here. We don't want to hear any more rumors. We want to know what somebody actually knows.
At first, I was real hopeful, and you get people telling you all these different things. I finally threw my hands up, and I'm like, look, April didn't die that many times. She wasn't killed that many ways, and she can't be that many places.
Then, in 2009, when Gloria is out in California for yet another search, she hears through the grapevine that Dan, the man who might hold the clues to her daughter's disappearance, is sick and in the intensive care unit.
I'm like, oh my God, I've got to go see this man. He can't die. I could never rest if I'd been out here and I don't go talk to him.
With April's missing person picture on her t-shirt, Gloria Denton confronts the man she believes is somehow involved in her daughter's disappearance.
And he looked at me and I said, Dan, I'm Gloria. I'm April's mom. I kept on waiting on that hate to come over me, and it just never came.
Dan and Gloria talk for over an hour. His kindness makes Gloria feel as though she has been wrong all along about his role in April's death.
I started crying, and he cried with me. And, he took my hand, and he said, April was a sweetheart, Gloria, and whoever killed that girl needs to be brought to justice.
Then, just days later, before dying, Dan confesses to friends that he knows more about April's disappearance than he let on.
Dan said when he was dying, that girl, April Pitzer, said her mom's in the right place, she's just not been far enough.
I believe when he said we were looking in the right place, he was referring to his mine.
In March 2010, a team of volunteer mine enthusiasts take Dan's words seriously. They have the capabilities of rappelling 3,000 feet deep into mines. If April is farther down in the Red Dog mine, they will find her.
I copy you, Mike. I'm gonna start heading down.
Okay.
On roll! Clear.
Do you want to give us an update of what you see?
It's a clean bottom. There's no debris. It's just a clean bottom.
Once again, the search reveals nothing new.
I can't tell you the nightmares that I've had that April was in Red Dog Mine. No matter how many people have went down there, how many times, I could never get that vision out of my mind. But this time I went, and now I know. She's not down there.
In the 6 years since April went missing, there have been dozens of searches, and not one has gathered a shred of new evidence. Yet investigators and a team of dedicated volunteers persist, largely because of April's mother's tenacity.
So many people don't report their loved ones missing as adults because, well, they're not worthy. That's a prostitute, that's an alcoholic, that's a drug addict, I don't care what they are. They are lives. They have names.
Gloria believes her daughter deserves justice and to be remembered as she was in life before her troubles began.
April was beautiful, full of life. She had a beautiful body, a beautiful soul, a beautiful face, and a heart of gold. Everybody loved her. I so believe she's here. I have peace that April's with the Lord. And one thing for sure, nobody can hurt her, nobody can take her from me, and she doesn't have to be afraid. I just wished our time together would have been different. But it'll be okay, because we'll do it again. I wish you'd just come running up over the horizon. Say, Mama.
John Glasgow disappeared on Monday, January 28, 2008. When a person disappears without a trace, often the most critical information is hidden in their actions and words from the days before they vanished. John Glasgow's last known whereabouts may hold the clues to what happened to him. When the chief financial officer of a prestigious construction company leaves home one morning, never to return, a confounding mystery unfolds.
I knew instantly something was wrong.
John has never been depressed, to my knowledge, but everyone has a breaking point.
Could a financial audit explain why the trusted 45-year-old executive disappeared?
Kind of felt like he was getting cornered a little bit.
Did John Glasgow have something to hide? Or was there something darker involved in his disappearance?
He would never have left his family. He would never have left me.
It's January 2008. 45-year-old John Glasgow is the trusted chief financial officer of Little Rock's most prominent multi-million-dollar construction company, CDI Contractors.
John was a very bright man, and he took his job seriously, and he was very good at it, and he liked his job. Got real proud to work there.
CDI was jointly owned by Little Rock businessman Bill Clark and department store giant Dillard's Incorporated.
It was a partnership between my dad and Dillard's Inc. We built Dillard's stores around the country and other construction jobs as well.
For the past 18 years, John's record as CDI's top accountant had always been impeccable.
John did a really good job keeping the books. You know, everybody knew where all the beans were.
There were never any questions or problems ever in the reports. He took great pride in making sure that they were perfect.
But the relationship between CDI and Dillard's is about to change. After Bill Clark died in May 2007, CDI's partner decides to redistribute the company's stock among its top executives, including John Glasgow. But before the deal goes through, the company wants to be sure CDI's books are clean. In January 2008, Dillard's hires external auditors to conduct an exhaustive search of CDI's bookkeeping.
The way we were doing everything was decided by my dad years ago, so we didn't understand what their concern was or why there were questions now, after all these years.
John seems increasingly stressed. As the audit proceeds, he goes off on a family vacation to Colorado to let off some steam.
William Clark said to him, "I don't know anybody who deserves a vacation more than you."
John has always worked hard, but finds balance in life through traveling with family and friends. As the youngest of 8 children, he has always valued time spent with his wife, Melinda, and siblings.
John was kind of the glue with the family. He kind of brought everyone together. He and his brother, Roger, were going to kind of tackle the 7 wonders together, sort of thing.
45, you're in the prime of manhood. Remember when I was 45, I thought I'd never get old.
But in January, when the family meets up to go on the ski trip to Colorado, John's demeanor worries his older brother, Roger.
I did notice something a little bit different. He seemed a little down.
John confides that there have been problems at work with Dillard's about CDI's accounting practices.
He said something along the lines of, the way we handle our inventory, they don't understand. And actually, the way they handle it, to use his words, they're screwing themselves.
Roger gives his younger brother a pep talk, which seems to lighten his load.
Basically, once the wheels of the aircraft lifted off the ground, he cheered up.
For John, getting on the slopes was a good thing. He was an aggressive skier and really enjoyed it very much. It was one of his very favorite things.
But back in the office in January 2008, the freedom he felt on the trails seems like a dream. The scrutiny over CDI's bookkeeping reaches a new level, causing John to work day and night.
I remember John saying, they come every day and they ask the same questions. And we're pulling the same reports and we're pulling the same papers. He was getting behind on his regular work.
After surviving the toughest week of his career at CDI, John is emotionally spent. It's Friday night, and John just wants to spend a quiet night at home.
He said, well, I'd really kind of like to hang out with my cat, if that's okay. He just seemed exhausted, Then Saturday got up early, went to work, worked all day.
John spends the weekend of January 26th in the office, trying to play catch-up. His boss, CEO William Clark, remembers seeing John at the office that day.
He was back at his desk, trying to get, things done that he wasn't able to get during the week.
Sunday is more of the same. John takes a break for lunch and goes home. Melinda notices her husband seems a bit distracted.
We ate lunch, and then he just was laying on the couch. And, John was always doing something. And he wasn't a napper. It was just like he was thinking.
What is going through John's mind is a mystery to Melinda. She encourages her husband to stay home and take the afternoon off. But When she leaves the house to go play tennis, John returns to the office.
The very last thing he did on Sunday afternoon was book interest income for the month of January. So all indications were he would have been back to work on Monday.
Coming up, when Monday morning arrives, John Glasgow is nowhere to be found. Could stress at work have pushed this 45-year-old CFO over the edge? After the most difficult week of his career, Chief Financial Officer John Glasgow spends an entire weekend at the office trying to make up for lost time. His company, CDI, has been at odds with Dillard's, who own half the corporation, over accounting practices. After spending most of Sunday at the office, John finally heads home to his house on the hill, just a few minutes away.
We had plans to go to dinner with his cousin, who lives across the street.
John arrives home at 5, as promised. He's rarely late. He and his wife of 16 years walk hand in hand to John's older cousin's house, just a few doors down.
It was in January, and, the primary was coming up, but there was a lot of political discussion, and it was fun, and we had just a very lovely evening together.
John and Melinda pride themselves on their steady relationship. They first met in the 6th grade in Nashville, Arkansas, then went their separate ways for college. Years later, after each experienced a failed marriage, they reunited in Little Rock and fell in love.
Hey, we're home.
Catcher, happy to see you.
Okay, well, I guess that's all for this trip. And we'll see you next time.
Our marriage was solid. Absolutely. It was based on friendship and trust. And, we had a good time.
Family is everything to the Glasgows. Nights like these with John's cousin are the norm. At 8:30 p.m., the couple returns home.
I remember a clear night, and it was really nice. We got home, and John got in his favorite chair in front of the television. I came back to check on him to see if he was ready to go to bed, and he was asleep in the chair. It wasn't unusual for him to come to bed later.
But John never does come to bed. In fact, the next morning, he's nowhere around.
So when I got up and he wasn't in the chair, I just got ready for work like normal.
Melinda is not terribly concerned. John has a habit of getting up early to get a jump start on the day.
I at first thought he may have gone for a run.
Melinda continues her day as scheduled, but after a business luncheon that day, life as she knows it comes to a crashing halt.
It was not until 2:30 on the 28th that my cell phone rang.
John's co-worker at CDI calls and asks Melinda if she knows where John is. He still hasn't shown up for work.
I knew instantly something was wrong because John was either at home or he was at work. John was extremely predictable. There was nowhere else he would be.
Not knowing what to do next, Melinda calls John's brother Roger and asks him to meet at her house.
I just got in my car and went over there just right away. John is the most punctual, dependable person that you'll ever know. So that's why we were so anxious about it.
They make frantic phone calls to friends and family and scour the house for any clues John might have left behind.
We looked through the house to see if there were any signs of anything unusual or anything out of place, and nothing was.
But certain details emerge that seem unusual.
We found out from his next door neighbor that he had seen his car leave at around 5:15 in the morning. And even though he was getting up and going to work early and coming home late, 5:15 seemed abnormally early.
He didn't see John, but he saw his vehicle.
John's family is puzzled. Where was he going so early, if not to the office? As the clock ticks, 5:30 p.m. comes and goes, and still no word from John.
So we decided we had to call the authorities.
At 5:45 p.m., the Little Rock Police Department sends an officer over to the Glasgow residence to file a missing persons report. Details are shared with police that might be clues in John's disappearance.
We found some notes that he'd left, apparently for Melinda, that had like their bank account number on there, a combination of their home safe or something.
These numbers are written down on a page in Melinda's to-do notepad.
I always had it right underneath the kitchen phone, and it was on top of the counter that morning.
Why John deliberately wrote down these numbers is unclear.
I knew the combination to our safe, and of course our account was joint. I really don't know why he did, but it was his handwriting. I mean, he wrote it.
Upon investigation, the family finds that nothing is missing from the safe. John and Melinda's passports, along with some cash, are still there.
In counting the cash, there was more there than what we had always talked about we would keep there.
Melinda tells the officer taking the report that her husband has been under enormous stress at work, especially during the last week. She and Roger can't help but wonder if this is somehow related to John's disappearance.
John has never been depressed, to my knowledge. He's never been suicidal. He's been just the rock of Gibraltar. But everyone has a breaking point.
Good events over the week leading up to his disappearance have pushed John Glasgow over the edge. Could the reason for John's disappearance be connected to CDI's audit? Just 8 days before John goes missing, Dillard's CFO, James Freeman, called him at work, allegedly questioning his integrity.
The way he asked his question, he kind of dropped hints that the CFO is the one who goes to jail, for offenses like this. And John came to me. He was just very disturbed.
Within minutes, an emergency meeting was called to sort out the conflict between the two chief financial officers. The company's CFO denied having threatened John over the phone, but accusations continued to fly.
That's when they accused us of overbilling Dillard's and covering it up. And John just rocked his world because he prided himself on doing everything just by the book.
Why would they be playing hardball with John and CDI? I mean, they own half of the company.
That night, John tells his wife Melinda that he feels his character is under attack.
I'll never forget. I've never seen him in all the time I've known him, my whole entire life. Never seen him that upset.
The following week, on Tuesday, January 22nd, John begins recording calls that come into his office. He tells Melinda it's to protect himself.
That way, he could then prove that what was being said had actually been said.
It seems to improve his mood. That evening, John leaves an optimistic message on a friend's voicemail.
Well, everything's going good here. Just been keeping my head down, getting my work done, giving them everything they asked for, and I think it's going to work out to all of our benefit.
Before the week ends, John also decides he must defend CDI's practices in writing.
I got home from work late, and he was outside smoking. And I said, "What are you doing out here? It was cold." And he said, "Well, I'm writing a letter."
Basically, the letter just said that, we had a great partnership over the years, and when we were accused of being, unethical, we wanted to make things right and win their trust back and restore the relationship.
On the Saturday before John goes missing, William Clark sees John on his way to hand-deliver that letter to Dillard's CEO.
It calmed down. We actually had a good conversation, so I was kind of thinking that we had kind of gotten over a hump a little bit and that things were, looking up.
But despite the perceived optimism, just 2 days later, John disappears. Coming up, investigators track John's cell phone. Will it help them find the missing CFO? Just when the tension at work seems to be easing up, the unthinkable happens. John Glasgow is seen by a neighbor leaving his house at 5:15 a.m. Monday, January 28th, and he has not been seen since. His family is desperate to know where he is gone, and if he is alive and well. They begin strategizing their next move.
He's got his cell phone with him, and you can track a cell phone.
The Glasgows asked John's boss, William Clark, for help.
I'm friends with the guy who was running the company that we got our cell phones from at the time, so I kind of was able to cut through some of the red tape.
William's friend is able to find out the location of the last cell phone tower to have received a signal from John's phone.
He called me personally to say it's in the boondocks and you need to get up there quick.
We found out that the phone connected to a cell tower in Little Rock at 5:15, so apparently it powered on at the time the car was leaving.
This information confirms what the Glasgow's neighbor reported seeing. Then, John travels away from home, and his cell phone connects to various towers through electronic pings. The last ping is miles away from Little Rock. While Melinda stays at the house, Roger and a close friend head 60 miles west, out of the city, and into rural Arkansas, still hopeful they will bring John home.
They thought it would be real easy. They thought, well, we'll find him.
Maybe he was under so much stress that he was just needed to get away from the office and he needed to get outdoors.
But when Roger arrives at the desolate location where the last ping was received, his optimism fades.
They knew how far out from the tower the ping occurred, and there was a radius that you could look at, and they knew that it occurred in this radius, and they triangulated it to this point, which was almost right out in the middle of the Arkansas River.
There is no vehicle and no John. Did someone toss his phone into the river? Or worse, was John himself in the river?
When we got to this place on the Arkansas riverbank, I was going like that, no, this is not where he would go to clear his mind. I said, well, if he's walking it off, he's not down here by the river, he's over there at Petty Jean.
Petty Jean Mountain State Park is a place familiar to John, known for its stunning vistas and rocky bluffs. It's an outdoorsman's haven. Roger and his friend take off to search the mountain.
We would drive these dirt roads up to the edge of the mountain that overlooked the river, just to see if we could find his vehicle.
Not long after Roger and his friend start scouring Petty Jean, they receive a call from an employee at Mather Lodge, a popular tourist site at the top of the mountain. John's car, a dark gray Volvo SUV, has been located, sitting in the parking lot. For the Glasgow family, this is good news.
You can't imagine the sense of relief that I felt. We found his car, and therefore he's nearby, and we will find him shortly.
I thought, well, he's just out hiking it out. That's exactly what he's doing, That was his way, to get back into nature and to be able to think.
Chief Deputy Sonny Stover is one of the first investigators to arrive on the scene.
I first looked over the vehicle and checked it. Nothing out of the ordinary, nothing was out of place. Looked like that someone had just drove up there and parked.
When they got to his car, it was unlocked. His laptop case was in the back seat, and all his company-issued things were in it. His keys, credit card, gas card, and his cell phone were all in there.
All the items John Glasgow leaves behind seem to be deliberately chosen. Everything found in the laptop case was company-owned.
I thought it was strange that all those things would be in one place, because typically he would have the cards in his wallet and his laptop either at home or at the office. To me, it almost seemed like he was putting everything in one place where we could find it, almost like he was checking out.
Was John trying to tell them something? These latest clues provoke a new series of questions.
He never leaves his car unlocked, especially with valuables in the back seat. It's very strange.
For me, that says that he was through with this job. And I think that he put them all together to say, here are your things, and we're gonna move on.
Melinda remembered the terrible night following the meeting with James Freeman, back on the 18th of January, when John's crisis at work began to escalate.
We paced around the kitchen. We didn't eat, we didn't sleep. We just talked about our options. We don't have to live here. We can get other jobs. We can do other things. This is not okay. It just is not worth it.
It's now been almost 2 weeks since that night. It looks as if John Glasgow has taken those words to heart. His wife Melinda believes John has had enough, and they will soon find her husband hiking the trails of Petit Jean Mountain.
I felt confident that he was strategizing our next move and our plan. What was next for us?
We began getting people together to start hiking down to the falls and hiking down some of the trails to look and see if he'd went down the trails and see if we could locate him that way, or he'd got out and got lost, or maybe he'd fell and got injured.
On Tuesday, search efforts are hampered by the weather.
There were like 70-mile-an-hour sheer winds. There was a tornado that came through. It was really crazy weather.
But investigators don't let up. They know time is of the essence. Then, a tourist's photograph taken the day John goes missing confirms his SUV has been in the parking lot since Monday afternoon. With no sign of John 24 hours later, the car is now treated as a crime scene.
At that time, we had it impounded and brought to the sheriff's office where the state police had come in and tried to look for any evidence.
And they found no fingerprints of John or anybody. There were no liftable prints in that car.
Although this finding leaves family to conclude someone intentionally removed the prints, for investigators, it isn't enough to indicate foul play.
Normally on the inside of a vehicle, you're not going to find a whole lot of fingerprints because of the material of the dash or the console. It's too porous. Nothing was found that would indicate anything that was out of the ordinary. It just appears that someone had drove it up there and just got out.
As darkness sets in, the Glasgows must wait another day to continue the search for John. But finding his car at Mather Lodge has renewed hope that John is still alive. Coming up, the best bloodhounds in the state of Arkansas are brought in to hunt down John's trail. But what they find only intensifies the mystery. Get more disappeared online at investigation.discovery.com. The chief financial officer of a major contracting company, John Glasgow, has been missing for 48 hours. His SUV has been located at Petit Jean State Park in western Arkansas, a little over an hour's drive from his Little Rock home. In the hopes of finding him alive, a major search and rescue operation is underway.
We started out with the Petit Jean search and rescue team. They were up bright and early the next day, which would have been Wednesday morning.
After an initial search yields no sign of John, the park's rescue team calls for reinforcements.
They brought in George Storains, who I think is recognized as the best search and rescue man in Arkansas.
I got here the second night and basically kind of took control at that point. The information I had received was there was a chance that he could be injured, whether self-inflicted or not. We weren't sure at that point.
On day 2 of the operation, a massive grid search for John Glasgow ensues.
We were looking for an injured individual because a 45-year-old male shouldn't be missing unless he's hurt.
The weather, along with the rocky terrain with jagged precipices and deep caves, proves a challenge for search teams.
It was blustery, cold, not good weather to be out.
3 days after he is reported missing, the search for John Glasgow on Petit Jean is in full throttle.
The canines got here, and we used them and where his car had last been seen. He wasn't seen there, but we knew he was there because of his car.
From the location of John's vehicle, the bloodhounds are led out in concentric circles, hoping to pick up on John's trail. The dogs zero in on Cedar Trail, behind Mather Lodge, but the scent quickly fades. Searchers believe that it was the wind, rather than John himself, that had carried his scent to this location.
Scent pools a lot like smoke, and it had eddied out behind the lodge, and we're fairly confident it came from his car.
They found no scent trails leading from that vehicle off in any direction.
This puzzles investigators. It's as if John parked the car and then disappeared into thin air.
My first initial was he was up here de-stressing and hiking or something, but then the weather, the time of day, why would he be up here doing this or that? Eventually, I got the feeling that he was not on this mountain.
So if you said, okay, he drove the car there, and he parked it there, and he got out of it, and he went somewhere on foot, those dogs would have picked up a scent trail. They didn't. So no fingerprints, no scent trail, no body, no remains, no nothing.
After 3 days, search and rescue feel like they have exhausted all possibilities.
By the time I got there Friday, they were calling the search off.
George Stowe Rains must break the devastating news to the Glasgow family.
No family wants to admit their family members may not be found. It was a very emotional day, the day we suspended.
I'm thinking, well, then how did this car get here? Then where is he?
Investigators shift their focus once again. With his car found in the parking lot and no sign of John, police are desperate to learn how it got there. They begin searching the surrounding area for clues.
We began going down the mountain, checking area convenience stores, places that he might have gotten gas or stopped to get something to eat, asking if they had video surveillance.
Since there is only one direct route to Petit Jean State Park from Little Rock, investigators question all employees from businesses along that road.
There is a convenience store that's right there at the intersection of the highway that goes up to Petit Jean, and they have video that shows the road outside. They let us look at that video.
Police and family look closely at the tape. It is clear John's SUV never passes through that intersection from the time he goes missing until the time the car is believed to have been parked at Mather Lodge.
We went through hours and hours of video surveillance and never found the first sign that he had stopped.
Records of John's cell phone pings show his vehicle arriving to the area around 7:30 a.m., over 2 hours after leaving Little Rock. There are other roads leading to Mather Lodge that would bypass the more direct route caught on camera.
If the car had gone directly there, it would have taken it, let's say, an hour and 15 minutes. But instead, it took it 2 hours and 15 minutes.
It is anyone's guess why John might have taken the long road to Petit Jean.
That raises all kinds of possibilities. If the car stopped off somewhere, did John get out of the car? Could he have possibly been the victim of a crime? And then somebody else drove the car up to Petit Jean.
If Roger's theory proves true, if someone else drove the car to Petit Jean, choosing a longer, less conspicuous route, this would account for the lapse in time it takes for the car to reach the mountain. But lack of any evidence keeps family and investigators in the dark.
There's no evidence that there's foul play involved. Nothing points to that, so we don't know.
Investigators can't ignore another possibility. John might have planned his disappearance and had help getting off the mountain. There is an airstrip in Petit Jean State Park that could have been used as a quick getaway.
They had no record or no recollection of any flights coming in. They do have a lot of what they call touch and goes. People just come up there and touch down and then take back off.
Even though there are no records to indicate any air traffic at all on the day John goes missing, there is no way to rule it out.
This is an airport that's privately owned and it's not manned, on a regular basis, so there's a chance that someone landed a plane up there and took off and nobody would know about it.
If John were planning an escape, would he really leave his entire life behind? Even with the intense pressure John was facing at work, investigators, family, and friends find it hard to imagine John Glasgow just walking out of his own life.
He was very dedicated to Melinda, to CDI, to his friends. He did not do anything out of the ordinary.
The chances of him leaving on his own because he knew someone outside of his family or circle of friends would be minuscule at best, if not less than minuscule, because everything that he did was with family or friends.
While the investigation outside the park continues, Melinda and John's family have been staying at a cabin on Petit Jean Mountain, grasping on to their last bit of hope that someone will stumble upon something which will lead them to John. After 2 weeks on Petit Jean, it's time for the Glasgows to go home.
It was hard for us to leave because that's where we thought he was. And it was hard to let go of the idea that he was not there. And so we had this candlelight vigil up there.
Probably 50 to 60 of us gathered on that Sunday at sundown and just lit candles and set 11 light to John.
Coming up, the mystery heightens when a witness and a dog agree John is very much alive. 2 weeks have now passed since John Glasgow's disappearance. Police and family are no closer to the truth. The search for John on Petit Jean Mountain, where his car was found, has been exhausted. With no body and no evidence of foul play, the city of Little Rock, Arkansas is abuzz as to how a prominent CFO could have vanished without a trace. Police question employees and confiscate the tapes from the recording device John had recently put on his work phone, following the fallout with Dillard's CFO. According to the Little Rock PD, there is nothing on those tapes that would give them any indication of what happened to John. To quell speculation that John Glasgow had anything to do with embezzling money from the company, CDI has the books officially examined.
We did a forensic audit just to have somebody go through his computer and our accounting records as best they could. And the only comment they gave us was they were impressed with how good our books looked.
John's personal finances were equally up to par.
Our house and our cars were paid for.
All the money that he ever deposited is there.
If John Glasgow has no reason to run, then why is he nowhere to be found?
I don't know what crime could have been involved, but if you eliminate everything else, you have to face that as a possibility.
Still, police in Conway County, out near Petit Jean State Park, continue to be flooded with reported sightings of John. As a white male with brown hair, age 45, his description could match virtually anyone.
We were posting flyers all over, everywhere from Little Rock all the way to all the small towns between Little Rock and the mountain.
But in one place, Russellville, Arkansas, a small town off I-40 that caters to truckers and travelers, there are several alleged sightings of John. An attendant at the Phillips 66 believes she saw John filling up, and then there's a waiter at the Waffle House.
At the Waffle House, someone thought that they had seen a person that looked like John come in and eat breakfast.
He believes that it was 100% positive that it was John Glasgow.
Without a paper trail or catching John on surveillance cameras, investigators have no choice but to discount the sightings. But soon after, John's story garners interest from a search team 1,500 miles away.
I saw John's picture, and something about his picture just made me want to call and just offer our assistance.
I got a call from a lady in Maine. Her name was Julie Jones. She had a dog named Quincy.
Although 3 weeks have now passed since John disappeared, Julie claims the dogs are trained to pick up on cold trails.
The last case that we did, it was 6 months old, and we traced from where the person went missing to where the area that they were found in.
The Glasgow family agrees to pay for the woman and their dogs to come to Arkansas. At this point, they're willing to do anything to find John.
We loaded the dogs up in my truck, went up on the mountain, started there at Mather Lodge where the car was.
The dog is given a scent from a worn article of John's clothing and let loose.
From that area, we found no tracks away from the vehicle where it was parked.
Roger brings the dog's handlers to all the places that could hold clues in John's disappearance. They start at the Phillips 66 in Russellville. What Quincy the dog finds is shocking.
He went to a cooler in the further left-hand corner, and then from there actually jumps up on the counter. That tells anybody who's with us that the person was obviously, in this case, paid for something.
Next, Julie Jones leads her dog out to the road. Quincy heads for a nearby Comfort Inn.
I immediately had a positive trail. We went upstairs by a group of rooms where he showed interest in one particular room. From the Comfort Inn to the Waffle House, that was only 50 yards, if even that much. So it was a direct route, a direct walking route. Quincy took me right into the Waffle House.
This happens to be the same restaurant where the waiter believes he served John Glasgow breakfast.
You can never be 100% sure really on anything like that, but due to all the training that I've done with Quincy, I feel very certain that he was at these places.
If Julie Jones is right, what was John Glasgow still doing in the area close to 3 weeks after he disappeared? Even after the scent dogs confirm the Russellville sightings, neither the Glasgows nor detectives are able to find anything relevant tied to these clues. In the end, the leads go nowhere. The hunt for John is back to square one.
I appreciate these people. They believe in the capabilities of their dogs. As it turns out, I just don't think that these were correct.
It's now 1 month to the day after John goes missing, and CDI's partner finally breaks their silence. They release a joint statement with CDI to the media, officially clearing John's name of any criminal wrongdoing.
Dillard's explanation was that they did not suspect any misappropriation of funds from CDI by John Glasgow or anyone else.
Although investigators have found no criminal connection between John's work at CDI and his disappearance, families still believe the two are somehow tied together.
It's hard for me to even fathom that they're not related because of the timing of the thing. Kind of in hindsight, it makes you wonder.
Since the company has consistently declined to comment on anything further relating to John Glasgow, it's impossible to know if the two things are related. Why Dillard's CFO, James Freeman, was questioning CDI's accounting practices after all these years is anyone's guess.
Well, I never really got an explanation. It really caught everybody off guard, though.
Then, in March, just 1 month after clearing John's name, the company releases a startling earnings statement.
Dillard's had to make a restatement of earnings going back 6 or 7 years.
In a report filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission, Dillard's admits overstating their profits by $7.1 million over the last several years. Dillard's explicitly blamed CDI for the error. In the statement, the company claims CDI was overbilling them for construction jobs they had done for their stores. Dillard's maintains the billing price was higher than the figure originally agreed upon, leading them to overstate their profits.
I know they did not understand why we were doing things the way we did them. I wish things had been a little more well documented so we could have avoided a lot of what happened.
Was this merely a misunderstanding? An accounting error on John Glasgow's part? Or something else? And what, if anything, did it have to do with John's disappearance? Perhaps John foresaw the storm that was about to hit and knew he would be the one to take the fall. Was John's integrity so important to him that he would voluntarily leave his family and friends rather than face a tarnished reputation? For those closest to him, this seems impossible.
As honest as he is, having to come up with so many stories to start a new life would just be really difficult for a guy like that.
He would never have left his family. He would never have left me. He never would have left his cat. And I don't say that lightly.
After 2 years, it gets exceedingly hard for John's family to believe that he is alive and well somewhere else.
All I know inside is I feel that he is not alive. And what I know is he would never have hurt himself. That is what I know.
In all this time, the only solid clue investigators have had to work with is finding John Glasgow's car on Petit Jean Mountain.
The finding of the vehicle up there, not finding any physical evidence or, any signs of anything. It just kind of makes it strange. We've never had a case like this before.
You never ever will say 100% he's not here, but an area that gets as much visitation as this park does, somebody would have found something by now. I firmly believe he is not on this mountain.
The case of the missing CFO has left the entire city of Little Rock and beyond completely perplexed.
This perpetual state of limbo that we're in, of not knowing, is how do you get over something like that? I don't think it's possible.
I have a missing persons poster of John that sits behind my desk, and every morning that I walk in, I see that poster. And I think, where's he at today?
We may never know what happened to John. And I've had to resign myself that that's a big possibility. Every day, it's almost like a box, and I put it in the box and I have to close the lid.
you.